What's up, Wizards? It is Dev. We are live on the twitch.tv/SBMTG Dev to look at the Duskmourn previews from today. It is Thursday, and we've got 16 or something of these. Not every card is the most impressive card I've ever seen, but there definitely are cards that are worth talking about, to say the least, man. Like, the last few cards I think are really good. There's one everyone's talking about that I don't think is great, and there's one everyone's bagging on that I think is better than you think. So, typical SBMTG video. I disagree with people who are probably correct. Let's look first, though, at Tunnel Surveyor, our first common of the day. Surveyor is 3 mana, 2 and a blue for a 2/2 human detective. When it enters, you get a 1/1 white glimmer enchantment creature token. So I guess in limited, this is a common way of triggering all of your eerie effects. Pretty cool. There's a few things, that care specifically about glimmers. So this will help enable those. It's 2 bodies on turn 3. That might be worth something. I'm not really sure. If you block with the Surveyor, now you have a creature in your graveyard for Delirium, but you still have a creature to block with too. I guess that's fine. Just, there's all kinds of weird payoffs that this can help sort of meet at the crossroads of in limited. So I like commons like this that are pretty easy to pick up and can probably do something for you. But outside of that format, it's just a it's just a worse Ether Channeler, and that card's not good enough, which is really sad because Ether Channeler looks dope. It's never done a thing, but we'll move on to Dashing Bloodsucker. Best thing about this card is the art. He certainly is dashing. I would date him. He's 4 mana, 3 and a black for a 2/5 vampire warrior. What could go wrong? He's got Eerie. Whenever an enchantment you control enters, and whenever you fully unlock a room, Bloodsucker gets +2/+0 and gains lifelink until end of turn. Just a limited card. Becomes a 4/5 lifelink whenever you Eerie. Apart from that, though, he's 4 mana for a 5 toughness guy, and that 5th point of toughness does tend to matter a lot in limited. So much. So do keep in mind that sometimes 5 toughness is at a real priority in limited, but obviously it's not super great. It's not super great. Yeah, he does have the blade haircut. He actually does have the blade haircut. Good call on that, but he looks so cool, dude. I want his sunglasses. We'll move on to Anthropede. This is 4 mana, 3 and a green for a 3/4 insect with reach. When it enters, you may discard a card or pay 2. When you do, destroy target room. We're getting there. Taking a little step up in card quality here. Again, in limited mostly. This is where this is going to see some play because everyone's going to be playing random rooms they fit into their deck or whatever. So this is probably going to find some target or another. And in the meantime, you've discarded a card. That means that you have found a way to enable Delirium. If this card does nothing else, it enables Delirium, but there are multiple reanimation spells in this set that we've already seen. We'll see one today in a color that sometimes gets them, but not often anymore. So we'll get there in a second. But yeah, this can enable some graveyard strategies in limited. And you don't even have to discard a card if you don't want to come down on card advantage or whatever. It's you can just pay the 2 if you got the extra mana laying around. So I think that this will probably find a target in a lot of games of limited, but even if it doesn't, it's a 4 mana 3/4 reach. It's better than a giant spider stats wise. So it's worth playing even if you never actually use its ability, depending on what you're doing. So it's kind of cool. It's all right. Orphans of the Wheat, not Children of the Corn. You'll see on a couple of cards today that Wizards is really trying to get sued by Stephen King. Super duper hard. Sometimes the scariest thing imaginable, Wizards, is litigation. So maybe make sure you clear these with legal. This is 2 mana, 1 and a white for a 2/1 human. Whenever Orphans of the Wheat attacks, tap any number of untapped creatures you control. Orphans of the Wheat gets +1/+1 until end of turn for each creature tapped this way. Their only family is each other, and their only toys are those who wander too far into the fields. Okay, so you have to read some of these flavor texts on these cards because they went a little bit hard. They went a little hard with the flavor text this time around. I feel like they actually got Stephen King to write some of the flavor text in this set. But this is a way in limited of enabling all the Survivor stuff, which is really ironic when you think about it from a flavor standpoint. This is very ironic that this enables survival shenanigans and lets you tap your guys down and suddenly get some benefit from them surviving. So you're going to need cards like this every now and again. So cool little uncommon, kind of signposty for the Survivor deck, but interesting that the survivors and the villains are working together, at least on this card. Could be good too. It's just 2 mana to have a thing that could be a 4/3 or a 5/4 relatively easily. And those kind of cards are typically okay and limited, but having to tap down your whole team isn't necessarily great. But I don't know. There's a lot of times where like I can't attack with like my 2/1/1s and my 2/3 because they have huge dudes over there, but I want to attack with them, and this kind of lets you, you know, go tall if going wide isn't working at that point. So I don't know. It's not too bad, and yes, the art is good. The art is pretty good. Good job, Julie Dillon, on this art. Unsettling Twins. Again, we are attempting. This one's even more brazen in a lot of ways. We are trying to get sued here. This is 4 mana, 3 and a white for a 2/2 human. When it enters, manifest dread, and the flavor text is just a line from The Shining. They just stole the line from The Shining, and they just figured that'd be okay. Like, oh no, that's vague enough. We didn't just rip the line directly from the book/movie. Come on, man. What are you doing? But yeah, this is 4 mana for 2 bodies and a card in your graveyard. Again, in limited, could be worse. It really could. It's not that bad. But it's obviously not good enough, more or less, anywhere else. Don't you? I've seen people say this is the common, like, collected company today. Shut up. Stop it. We'll move on to Emerge from the Cocoon. This is 5 mana, 4 and a white for a sorcery. Return target creature card from your yard to the battlefield. You gain 3 life. So white does get reanimator spells. It just got one last job in OTJ, like not too long ago. It's got Campus Renovation. It's got Abuelo's Awakening. So it's not like, you know, even in Revised or whatever, like back in the way back, it had, oh my goodness, it's a 4 mana card that just like is Zombify, you know, return a creature from a yard to the battlefield. Resurrect. Thank you, brain. God, why did that take so long? So white has had reanimation for, you know, a good long time, but it's always fun when you do see it to point it out. This only costs like 1 colored pip, and I think that's at least sort of interesting. The 3 life is kind of good too, you know? Like, I actually think that 3 life is not as good as a lot of the gravy that you see on 5 mana reanimator spells in standard right now, right? We've got like Invasion of Tolvada, which is fine. Cruelty of Gix, which is amazing. You know what I mean? Even like Rakdos Joins Up is really, really good as long as you're reanimating a legend. So as far as 5 mana reanimator stuff goes right now, this is like not necessarily the bottom of the barrel, because there's plenty of black commons that are technically worse than this. But, you know, all I'm going to say is that I think 3 life in a reanimator deck is better than it kind of presents itself. But I don't know. The best thing about this is probably that you have a white reanimator spell in limited. So keep that in mind. You know, but Commune with Evil is up next. This is 3 mana, 2 and a black for a sorcery. Thank you, MTG Goldfish, for the translation. Look at the top 4 cards of your library. Put 1 into your hand, the rest into your yard. You gain 3 life. Another incidental 3 life gain, another incidental food pop. You know, like 3 life is sometimes okay, man. And this one comes on turn 3, which is better than having to wait to pay 5 mana for it, right? It also kind of mitigates the fact that this is sorcery speed. Like, yeah, you can't do it on your opponent's turn, but rather than actually hurt your life total the way a lot of these black spells normally would, right? This actually aids your life total, maybe negates one of your opponent's early attacks or something, makes it a little bit more palatable to actually play this on turn 3 into a wide open attack, you know? 3 life is not good, but it's not bad either. It's really not terrible. And the fact that the other ones go into your graveyard like really helps enable Delirium. You get to basically cast Impulse in black and get the best card off the top 4 of your library, which is always going to be pretty good in terms of just, you know, a card selection effect. That's not bad. But the fact that you also put the other cards in the yard is kind of unbelievable in some ways. I don't think this card is good. I think at 2 mana sorcery speed, this card would have been great. I think at 2 mana instant speed, don't gain the life, this card would have been specifically very good. It's just Grizzly Salvage or, you know, Cash Grab. You know, cards have been printed recently that are similar to this. And I don't think this is better to play than a card like Cash Grab, which we currently have access to in standard. But I don't know. It just kind of like caught my eye. I think that the life gain kind of helps it a little bit. And I don't think I want to skip my 3rd turn to play this card. But that's actually, all I'll say is that's actually pretty good selection. It's not terrible, dude. So I'll move on here to Fear of Infinity. This is, well, no, I don't think it's the last uncommon of the day. There's a couple more after this, but this is 3 mana, 1 a blue and a black for a 2/2 enchantment creature. It's a nightmare. It has flying, lifelink, and it cannot block. Boo. Eerie. Whenever you eerie, you may return Fear of Infinity from your yard to your hand. Pretty cool. Be even cooler if it could block. It's like, I know it would get annoying, But your opponent's not going to play an enchantment every single turn of the game. But I don't know. Flying lifelink blocker would get annoying if they could every turn. I just want cards to be better. I just want Magic cards to be better. They're trying so hard to make them like not crazy powerful. And like, I respect that. I understand from a game design perspective why you do that, but I don't know. I think this would be annoying if it could block, but just annoying. And like, it still requires that you build your whole deck around it. It still requires that after you build your enchantments deck, you actually want to play this card. And I'm not even convinced that you would, you know? So I don't know, dude. A 3-mana, it's a Windrake, right? It's a 3-mana 2/2 flyer with upside. So it's a Windrake. It can't be that good. It can't even block. Windrake can block. It's like, I guess it has the lifelink, so that's cool, but I'm just not like that impressed by this card. You know what I mean? And yeah, it doesn't even come back to the battlefield. It comes to your hand. So you have to spend the mana on it again. Like, yeah, poop. Poop. I call poop on this guy. He is really cool looking, and flying lifelinkers are sometimes pretty cool creatures, right? But I'm not seeing it this time around. I'm just not seeing it this time around, but it does enable any like eerie effects. So if you play a second copy of it when this is in the yard, then this one comes back to your hand. You know, if the one that's in play dies, you play the one from your hand, bring that one back. Like, that's cute that you can loop them, which is probably partially why it's called this. Not just the fact that it can come back, but if you get multiple copies, you are Mobius stripping, my man. So that's kind of cute and probably at least kind of fun and annoying and limited, but I don't think it comes anywhere near our standard, you know. But we'll move on to grab the prize. We're getting into the good lower rarity stuff now, at least from my estimation. Grab the prize is 2 mana, 1 and a red for a sorcery. As an additional cost to cast this spell, discard a card. Draw 2 cards. So it's another Tormenting Voice effect. Like, what does this one do? If the discarded card was not a land, grab the prize deals 2 damage to each opponent. So I gotta admit to liking this. I think there's better effects. You know, we have like Demand Answers, which is instant speed. We have Bitter Reunion, which is sorcery speed like this, but I feel like it's just better. You know, you get the enchantment trigger when it comes into play. You can sack it for 1 mana and give haste to whatever you're reanimating or whatever. I think Bitter Reunion is my favorite in standard of these effects. That said, 2 damage, you know, I discard my Atraxa and I just like ping you for 2. It's not bad either. So card's not terrible. I like Tormenting Voice effects with upside, and sometimes we see like really elegant ones. Sometimes we see like really awkward ones with all kinds of weird wording on them because they have to, you know, screw in the set mechanics somehow, you know. Sometimes it's held together with rubber bands and zip ties and whatnot. But this time they just decided to go as simple as possible. Shock people. Just shock a person when you use your Tormenting Voice effect. And honestly, that could be worse for like burn decks. That could be worse. It really could. But we'll move on. It's WinCube, everybody. WinCube's here. 44 months of subbage from WinCube and 2 gifted subs. Andy made the YouTube video. Good to see you, Win. I'll talk to you a little bit after we get done with the video. Irreverent Gremlin is up next. 2 mana, 1 and a red for a 2/2 Gremlin with Menace. Whenever another creature you control with power 2 or less enters, you may discard a card. If you do draw a card, its ability triggers only once each turn. Boo, right? Well, this time I think they may have gotten it right. When you consider that this is on curve with hop to it, you just draw 3, discard 3 on the next turn on curve. Gleeful Demolition, you know, like play this on turn 2, Gleeful Demolition on 3, and you have 2 mana open, and you also get to filter 3 cards. So if you're a Reanimator deck or anything that cares about graveyard synergies, or you're looking for the Reanimator spell, or you're a combo deck that has important cards you have to draw into, this would help you do that really, really easily with a lot of the cards we have in Standard, if it didn't only trigger once per turn. So I get why it only triggers once per turn, but it does make the card like significantly worse. That said, still kind of okay. 2 mana, 2/2 with a keyword ability that allows you to filter like once a turn is fine. It's not that bad, dude. Think of cards like Takassi's Welcome and Welcoming Vampire and Caretaker's Talent. They only, now first of all, they get you raw actual card advantage, whereas this doesn't. So I will admit to that. There's a massive, you know, crevasse. I've said gulch and ravine this previous season. Let's go with crevasse. There's a massive crevasse in terms of the quality difference in drawing a card and rummaging a card. It's not even looting, it's rummaging, which is just the worst kind of these effects. But that said, even at once per turn, I still think it feels like, especially in a deck that cares about the graveyard, it still feels like a 2-mana Welcoming Vampire. Takasi is welcome, whatever. And that is relatively powerful. You know, those abilities also only trigger once per turn, and they're pretty powerful. So I have to admit to not hating this, although I also have to wonder why, especially in Duskmourn, a place where there are unspeakable, untold horrors around every corner, things the human mind cannot comprehend without going mad. How does a gremlin have menace? You know what I mean? If I walked into room number 130 in Duskmourn, you know, I've been through 129 rooms, and the 130th room is just this guy eating candles, I would not be scared at all. I'm a grizzled veteran at that point. I think I'll be fine. So I don't get the menace, but I do like that they just slapped a keyword ability onto him. I don't think that's too bad. I really don't. Yeah, hell yeah, Deb topographical term speedrun. We're gonna make it work, baby. Popular Egotist is probably my favorite uncommon of the day, but that doesn't mean it's the best. You know this is going to be my favorite uncommon, right? I'm very predictable at this point, but in any case, this is 3 mana, 2 and a black for a 3/2 human rogue. You can pay 1 and a black and sack another creature or enchantment to have Egotist gain indestructible till end of turn. You also have to tap it. So modern day regeneration. Whenever you sack a permanent, target opponent loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. So like, how many Aristocrats cards are they going to give us in this set, dude? And how the deck's going to be 100 cards, because I'm playing 4 LSO Core, not really, probably 3. 4 Vron, not really, probably 2. 4 copies of this card, 4 copies of the Room. I'm playing 4 copies of whatever Vengeful Blood Witch, the one that comes out in Foundations and isn't legendary. I'm playing 4 copies of that. I'm not playing any Vein Ripper at this point. I don't think we have to, but there's like 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. There's like 13 Blood Artists in our deck. Not to mention some other cards in Standard that do this. So the whole deck's just going to be Blood Artists at one point. And this isn't quite Blood Artist, but in some ways it's better, right? This is actually like a half of a Mirkwood Bats, kind of. You know, like I think Mirkwood Bats is whenever you sack or create a token. And this doesn't work on creating tokens, but it also doesn't care what you sack. So Mirkwood Bats, I think is only sacking tokens. But when it comes to the token side of it, it's only sacking tokens. This cares about sacking permanents, which you'll do a great deal of. Now, I worry that this is just a signpost uncommon for a kind of red-black sacrifice your enchantments deck in Limited, and it's not powerful enough for Standard. But I'm still going to try to make it work. As many of these effects as we can get, I will take. We're sacrificing creatures, we're sacrificing clues, we're sacrificing treasures, which I think is important. You might actually put this in a Black-Red Aristocrats deck in Standard, because Red has a fair number of ways of making treasures in current Standard, and treasures are this thing's absolute best friend, although based on the art and flavor text, I don't think you want to be this thing's best friend. But in any case, it's also got like a baked-in indestructibility, like regeneration effect on it, and that's pretty good, considering when you do play Blood Artist or LSO Core or Vron or whatever on your turn 2 or 3, the first thing your opponent does is kill it. Your opponent kills it immediately. So like this has the ability to survive removal and sack a creature at the same time. It's a sacrifice outlet as well as a Blood Artist. And I'm pretty excited about that. Now, is it too expensive to play? Yes. Is the activated ability too expensive? Yes. These things are stone cold facts I can't change. But that said, whenever you see a Blood Artist that is also a sacrifice outlet in and of itself, I think you have to get a little bit excited for that, and it justifies in some ways the 3 mana cost for this. So I've been thinking about this card all day. As you can tell, I'm just like going shotgun, like Uzi speed on this card right now, trying to get in as much as I can about it, because like I can't get it out of my head. Nah. Now I'm thinking about Kylie Minogue. But this card, probably again, just qualifier here, is not great, right? But I love it. Will you allow me to love things? It's a strictly worse, you henny. Well, strictly is a word to use there. Strictly means worse in every situation, and Yahini does not have this last line of text. This last line of text is supremely exciting, bro. This line of text is so good, especially with a common we'll see, or I think it's an uncommon, that we'll see just a little bit later on in this video. This card works really well, so I'm excited. Try to stop me. I still have that Magic player inside of me. It was never erased. You know, I see people in the comments and I see people on Reddit who just hate Magic and they hate new cards and they judge every new card in, you know, like if it's not immediately the best card in standard, they're like, this card is trash. And it's like, I can't be that guy. I can't be that guy. I still have hope. And so maybe I would make it in Duskmourn. I'm not too sure. But anyway, with friends like these, who needs enemies? Yeah, Pug, bunch of eights. That's a great first time chat. You're absolutely right. This to me, and I'm pretty sure this is a lady, but this, and no one will get this reference, but this reminds me of the WWE tag team Pretty Deadly. This looks like, I think his name's Kip Wilson or something. This looks like the blonde guy in Pretty Deadly. And he's just tossing his tag team partner to the wolves. And I love like how stunned these killers look. These killers are like looking at the blonde person in this frame. Like, did you really just push your best friend into us, you jerk? Like, what? Like, we should come after you just for that. Just because we're killers doesn't mean we don't have any morality. We're going to get you. But anyway, I think the card's fine. But somebody got it. Shane's birthday tweet with the yes boy. Yes, boy. Let's move on. Because we've gone into really esoteric territory here. Let's look at Wary Watchdog. This is 2 mana, 1 and a green for a 3/1 dog. And when it enters or dies, you get to surveil 1. It's fine. Pretty good. I like when creatures have both an enters and death trigger. I just really like that. So I can't not like this card. It's also a dog. It's a good boy. And so I like him. It's kind of all there is to it, you know. He's got a decent power toughness, although 2 mana 3/1s aren't playable in and of themselves. But this isn't one of those dogs that like, oh, when it dies, it does a thing, or you can sack it to do a thing, and it does a thing, and you enter, you draw a card when it enters the battlefield. Spirited Companion, 2 mana 1/1. This is not that. This can actually trade up on blocks really easily and still get you that surveil trigger again. So kind of like it. What is it? Rubble Belt Maverick is a 1 green mana creature that as soon as it enters gets you 2 surveils. And I think that text box is probably better than this text box. But there's still a chance that if exactly the right deck exists, it wants this card. But I kind of doubt it. But that said, that's really sad. That's sad because, you know, just a few short years ago, pros would look at this card in preview season and be like, dude, you see the value on that? And like, I think we passed the moment in time where this is like truly a standard playable card, but you do still have to give it up for the value. It's pretty good value. Ain't bad. But let's move on to a card I was just referencing. It's Final Vengeance here, a single green mana for a sorcery. As an additional cost to cast this spell, sacrifice a creature or enchantment. Exile target creature. Okay, so exile for 1 mana. And it's not like, you know, Duskrose Reliquary, which I have to say, I think there are reasons why the Aristocrats deck might still play Duskrose Reliquary, either over this or in some number along with this. There's also, and I always forget the name of it, dude. And I've played it. I've played this card like literally dozens or hundreds of times. But there is a 1 black mana card in standard right now that's like, sorcery speed, sacrifice a creature or artifact in addition to its costs, and then destroy target creature or planeswalker. Annihilating Glare. All I had to do was say what the card does. But yeah, Annihilating Glare is in standard. It's a destroy effect, but it allows you to sack creatures or artifacts rather than just creatures or enchantments. So slightly different depending on what you're trying to do. And I don't know, that card's different for a few reasons. And that card targets planeswalkers. So I don't know if you play some number of both. It is kind of important to blow up planeswalkers at the moment, but only a little bit important. But exiling creatures, I would argue, is more important altogether. And being able to sack enchantments gives you a whole new suite of options, right? The problem with this in Aristocrats is that if you are black-white, then you're probably playing some kind of clue synergy, whether you're playing Homicide Investigator or you're playing most likely Novice Inspector, which, you know, both of those cards will give you artifacts. Some of these Aristocrats decks play Teysa in the 3-drop slot as a 1 or 2 of. That will give you artifacts. So in that case, you probably want Annihilating Glare. But Final Vengeance allows you to play cards like Hopeless Nightmare. How many times am I going to have to download that card during preview season? It's kind of becoming a joke. I think this is the half-dozenth time that I've mentioned that card because there's so much that wants you to sack enchantments. And Hopeless Nightmare is just like one of the best, you know, things that let you, that kind of benefits from that strategy. especially if you like turn 1 Hopeless Nightmare, turn 2 Final Vengeance, they're like Deep Cavern Bat, or like whatever, they're 2 drop away, you know, and then you still have a mana left, and you sacked your Hopeless Nightmare, got the Scries. Just a great way to start a game. Aristocrats needs as many cheap cards, read 1 mana cards, as it can in this day and age to be a viable deck. So I worry about 3 mana cards, like the Blood Artist-y sort of adjacent effect that we just saw, the sort of half of a Mirkwood Bats. I worry about cards that are 3 mana. I do, in Aristocrats. I don't know if I can afford that. But when you see 1 mana cards, you can get really excited, because that's the kind of cards that this deck needs to like actually work. And again, Exile is just so powerful that I think this is definitely going to do something, right? If I was rating this card, I would probably give it like a 6.8. I think that it's definitely D's. Yeah, sorcery speed hurts a bit, but Bone Splinter's effects tend to be sorcery speed. Like if you're going to play Annihilating Glare, Dusk Rose Reliquary. Last season, if you were going to play Rites, Rite of Oblivion, they're all sorcery speed, but they all tend to be the best cards in the deck too. So I don't know, man. I definitely think it's like 2 of territory, but in a lot of Aristocrats decks, the way they're currently being built at the moment, you do have to worry about like, well, what about my sack and artifact synergies with Bartolome and Annihilating Glare and a couple of other cards for that matter if you want to play them. So, I don't have that many enchantments in that deck. Are there going to be enchantment creatures I want to play? Maybe we're doing a thing with legendary creatures, since there's so many legendary Aristocrats matter kind of creatures. Maybe we're doing a thing with legendary creatures and I play Tiny Bones Joins Up on turn 1. And when it no longer has any relevance, I can sack the Tiny Bones Joins Up to the Final Vengeance, right? So there are paths you can go down, but I'm not sure if any of those paths are great. The last thing I'll say is that I've kind of been discussing an Orzhov Aristocrats build here, but I've also mentioned back there a few cards ago, sort of red-black sack your own enchantments build. And this obviously goes really well in that. So if you don't have access to, say, Dusk Rose Reliquary, or your deck doesn't care about artifacts, then like obviously in a red-black deck, this would be where you'd go. So probably going to see some play at some point, you know what I mean? But we'll move on into the rares. I guess that counts as the best lower rarity card of the day, but we'll move on to what everybody is calling the worst rare of the day. Everyone's bagging on this card. I've already shown you a little glimpse of it here, but in case you want to read the whole thing, it's Layline of Mutation. The final Layline in the cycle in this set, brand new Layline. The only reprint was Layline of the Void. What does Mutation do? Well, it's 4 mana, 2 and 2 green for an enchantment. If it's in your opening hand, you can begin the game with it on the battlefield. You may pay Wooburg rather than pay the mana cost for spells that you cast. So you have to pay 1 of each color. That's Wooburg, in case you're new around here. Or to Magic in general. Everyone says Wooburg. So you can pay 5 mana. So Timeless Lotus is in standard. That taps for Wooburg. I guess that kind of works, but mostly people have been saying this card's terrible, and they have their reasons. If you don't get it in your opening hand, well, it costs 4 mana to just play it. So you'll be playing it on turn 4, skipping your turn 4, and then like on turn 5, you still have to play the land, and like how much does it really ramp you, right? Because whatever, I actually think though that those are weak arguments. I don't think those are particularly good arguments at all. Invasion of Zendikar is a card that we're playing in standard right now. Is it not? Invasion of Zendikar on turn 4 goes and gets you 2 lands. So it ramps you from 4 to 6. And then in order to ramp into the Atrax on the next turn, you still have to have a land in your hand. Okay? Whereas Layline of Mutation, it may not go get you lands up front. It definitely exposes itself to, all manner of disenchant effects. So I'll give you that much. But if you're looking to play Atraxa on the next turn, this kind of ramps you more than an Invasion of Zendikar, even if you had to actually cast the card on turn 4, right? So I don't hate it, man. We already have a 5-color deck in standard that's looking to get, not necessarily Wooburg, but like can get Wooburg really easily. So if you start the game with it in play, then yeah, it's going to be a few turns. This is another one of the arguments people use. If you start the game with it in play, it won't be relevant until probably about turn 4, And I can agree with that assessment. They're right. However, soon we'll have Llanowar Elves in standard. So if you go Layline of Mutation to open the game, turn 1 Llanowar Elves, turn 2 Mana Dork or Glimpse the Core or some other ramp deck, well then suddenly on turn 3 you have 5 mana. If these cards are still out, you have 5. So you can Wooburg on turn 3 like somewhat easily with Llanowar Elves in the format. So keep that in mind, but that won't be for a couple of months. But again, the one of the big problems people have is that if you start the game with it on the table, it will be until about turn 4 that you can actually use the card. So Laylines, apparently, this goes with the argument. This logically follows from the argument. Laylines have to be good right now, immediately, as soon as you start the game. And that's never necessarily been true. Really, the blue Layline saw some play. And if that started the game in play, Austin, it didn't actually do anything till turn 3 or 4. The same thing is true of Leyline of the Void. Sometimes, Leyline of the Void matters on turn 1, 2. In some matchups, especially in older formats. But Layline of the Void works all game long. It's really good all game. Turn 5, 6, 7, 8, So yeah, this may not have like the immediate effect on the game and allow you to win on turn 2 the way the red one does, But still, I think that starting the game with this in play and not having to worry about spending the 4 mana on it is pretty good. If it does nothing else but sit there until turn 4, then it's fine. It's kind of fine. Because it is going to allow you to play Atraxa or whatever, man. Vault-Born Tyrant, Portal to Phyrexia, One with the Multiverse, Omniscience is in MTG Foundations, and that comes out in like 2 months. There's no limit. Really, I mean, there is technically a limit, but I'm going to quote Mean Girls here. When you think about it, the limit does not exist. There's plenty of things you can do with this in Standard that allow you to cast a ridiculous guy, like on turn 4, and I know that we kind of already are aiming for that in Standard, but I would argue that this is actually a pretty stable way of doing it, and like no one's giving it that credit right now. So, I don't know, dude. I don't think it's that bad. Like, I really think it's kind of fine. It's not like we have a bunch of Eldrazi you want to get out quick. Oh, wait. Yeah, exactly. This allows you to cast like 11 and 12 mana Eldrazi and, Commander or whatever. There's already cards like this, like Fist of Suns is from like 5th Dawn or something. It's from the Mirrodin block, I think. And it doesn't see like all the play in the world in Commander, but there are some setups with it. Having a free Fist of Suns in Standard, bro, like I think it's better than people are giving it credit for. Like by far. I think that being able to play any ridiculous monster by turn 4 with even a tiny amount of ramp is better than like anyone thinks that it is, Like if your opponent plays this to start the game and you kind of chuckle to yourself like I can run them over before they ever use that card. Big deal. And then on turn 3, they temporary lockdown you and you're like, oh crap, they're going to get to turn 5. Like that. I just feel like there will be a point in the game where your opponent hits sweeper and your blood runs cold because you're like, oh crap, they play one more land and they can play any card in the game of Magic. It could even be a boat. So I honestly think this could be Transformers, more than meets the eye on this thing. Don't shoot it down so quickly. I'm intrigued by it. But we are going to look next at what I think is actually like the second best card of the day by my estimation. It's Silent Hall Creeper. 2 mana, 1 and a blue for a 1/1 enchantment creature. It's a horror and it cannot be blocked. I like 2 mana 1/1s that can't be blocked. Whenever Silent Hall Creeper deals combat damage to a player, choose one that has not been chosen yet. Either put 2 +1/+1 counters on Hall Creeper, or draw a card, or Silent Hall Creeper becomes a copy of another target creature that you control. I have seen some people a little puzzled about how this works if you don't have any other creatures out. You just don't pick a thing. You don't pick it. You don't pick this, as far as I understand, and I've seen a couple of people explain it today. If you don't have another creature out that you can target with this ability, like sure, it'll trigger, but you haven't chosen the ability because you can't target any, there's no target. So as soon as you have another creature out that the ability can target, that's when the ability works. So even if it's, 4 turns in a row that you don't have a creature out, the moment you do have a creature, it will copy that if it's the only thing left to choose. I'm pretty sure that this is a John Carpenter's The Thing reference. Is that a John Carpenter movie? Is it Wes Craven? Am I mixing up my directors here? I don't know. Anyway, I think this is a reference to The Thing because it gets, stronger. You can't block it. They don't see it. They don't know where it is. They can't block it, right? So it gets stronger as the turns go by. And then it draws a card, right? That's another reference to it getting stronger, learning things about the crew, right? Like I have to kind of subtly infiltrate the crew and learn things about them so I can copy them well. And then it becomes a copy, literally a reference to The Thing. It just becomes a copy of a member of the crew. I'm pretty sure that that's what this card is. But I haven't talked about the actual card quality whatsoever. I was right. It is Carpenter. Good. This is also, in fact, pod racing. You are right, Jack Wise. I think this card's pretty good, dude. we've seen cards like this recently, haven't we? A lot of 2-mana blue creatures that can't be blocked plus upside. And that doesn't make them good in and of themselves. But when you're a 2-mana 1/1 that becomes large and still can't be blocked, that's great. When you draw me a card and still can't be blocked, that's great. Like the first 2 turns this goes to swinging, it's really good. And it doesn't actually turn into one of your guys until like turn 5, you know? And it's already done 5 points of combat damage to the opponent at that point. Like if you swing in, it does 1 damage. You put 2+1/+1 counters. And you swing in again, that's 3 damage, so 4 damage in all. 2+1/+1 counters, draw your card. You swing in again, 3 more damage, 2+1/+1 counters, and then it becomes a copy. So you've actually done 7 damage by the time this becomes a copy of a guy, and therefore can be blocked. It's going to lose these abilities when it gets blocked, but it's going to keep its counters. So the trick here is to find a creature you can play on turn 3 or turn 4 that is not legendary and that you actually want to have a copy of. So I don't think you want to be Simic, but one of the first things I thought was Sentinel of the Nameless City is a good 3-drop. Preacher of the Schism is a fantastic 3-drop. Imagine having, a 4/6 Preacher of the Schism out? That seems pretty good, you know? So maybe in a blue-black deck or something. And then as far as 4-drops go, it's a little bit harder because there aren't that many copyable 4-drops, but even something like Hostile Investigator, right? You won't get like an ATB trigger when it copies Hostile Investigator, but it'll still be like a 6/5 Hostile Investigator. There's nothing wrong with that. So, you know, again, I think in blue-white, a couple of other colors, this definitely has like a chance, bro. And like you could do just mono blue unblockables if you wanted to. And this becomes a copy of Surge Engine or something. It becomes a copy of Surge Engine with its +1/+1 counters. And then you pay a blue and it can't be blocked again. Gross. So like, I don't know. This could be like mighty fine with a couple of things we have access to in standard right now. And Mockingbird does in fact keep it going. And I think it can kind of ping off of itself. If you have 2 copies of it in play, I'm pretty sure that you can just like make one a copy of the other and make the other a copy of the first one, and then suddenly they can still go unblocked, you know? And that's kind of neat. So they work in multiples a little bit. Surge Engine. Like he's knighted. I always say it that way too. Surge Engine. That magic card, which I love with all of my, I really like Surge Engine. But yeah, this is sweet. Yeah, and I wanted to copy opponents' creatures too, but alas, it's only a thing you control. But altogether, man, I think this is one of the better unblockable 2-mana blue creatures we've seen in a while. It's better than the last one. Like there was just one in Bloomburrow at like common or uncommon. But the one before that was Suspicious Stowaway, a card that's also very near and dear to my heart. And I think this is just like much better than Stowaway. A million times better, than Stowaway was. So big fan, man. I do like this card. And I've been looking too. One last thing. I've been looking for blue 2-drops, you know? Azure Beastbinder was a card that I thought might be really good. And Beastbinder has been okay. It has been fine in some of the testing I've done. But it wasn't the sort of blue mid-range 2-drop that I thought it was going to be. It wasn't, you know, that power level. And I'm hoping that this is not like a similar storyline to Azure Beastbinder. I want this to really be the blue 2-drop that I've been looking for. I really do. What if you turn it into a copy of Subterranean Schooner? What if you copy a vehicle? How does that work? Maybe we do go Simic, bro, because if like copying vehicles, it just becomes a copy of the creature vehicle forever. But even if it doesn't, how does that work? I should know how that works. If it becomes a copy of an animated vehicle, do you now just have 2 vehicles out at the end of turn? Like it just becomes a vehicle and it can't swing yet? Is that how it works? Or is it always the vehicle? I should know that. Is it always a creature? TCG Tony just says yes. Yeah, so if I copy a vehicle, do I have to then crew it, or does it just remain a creature forever? I bet you have to crew it, right? It's a vehicle. You have to crew it. Right. You have to crew it. But I'm just thinking of like, if you are looking for good 4-drops to copy with this, maybe Simic, because like you get Sentinel of the Nameless City on 3. There's other good green 3-drops you could turn this into a copy of too. Pugnacious Hammer Skull and the 4/4 Toxic Trample guy. There's some good stuff. But that new 4-mana vehicle we saw, dude, Hedge Shredder. I always want to call it Ledger Shredder, but that's already a card. Hedge Shredder. Shredder. It's a 4 mana, like 5/5 vehicle that crews for 1. When it swings, you mill 2. And whenever a land goes to your yard from the grave to the graveyard, when your land goes to the graveyard from anywhere, you get to just put those lands into play. And this dude copying that seems awesome. To have 2 copies of that guy swinging at the same time seems disgusting. So maybe it is Simic, dude. Or like Sultai, you know? Yeah, crew it, but not that turn. That's kind of what I was thinking. But somebody else says you don't have to crew it. I think you do have to crew it. But still, we're cooking. Dude. The burners are on, dude. I really think this card is like potentially special. I really do. But we'll move on to it wasn't the second best card of the day because we have to talk about Unstoppable Slasher and I think a few more cards after this. No, this is the last one. This is my final card of the day. Is that for serious? This is the one everyone's talking about. But I don't necessarily think this is the best card of the day. We're going to have to do a reload on Mythic Spoiler, by the way. We're going to have to do that. Timber Savage, their first time chat was to say, this guy looks good or great. That was your second time chat. This one is so flavorful. Yeah, it really is. I imagine if they do a Universes Beyond or like a reskinned Secret Lair or something, this guy's going to be like Jason Voorhees or Michael Myers or something. If you're doing like a classic 80s movie slasher and you have to actually make a slasher card, I think they did a good job flavor-wise. This is 3 mana, 2 and a black for a 2/3 zombie assassin with Death Touch. Whenever Unstoppable Slasher deals combat damage to a player, they lose half their life, rounded up. When Unstoppable Slasher dies, if it had no counters on it, return it to the battlefield tapped under its owner's control with 2 stun counters on it. This reminds me, and I think this is the only card I've done this with this video, of this card, Master of Cruelties. A 5 mana 1/4 first strike Death Touch that only attacks alone, and if it attacks a player and is not blocked, that player's life total becomes 1 and Master assigns no combat damage this combat. This reminds me a little bit of that, but probably better. I was going to say worse, but at least Master has, first strike and Death Touch, so it's got the Glissa, combination of abilities. It's just impossible to block. This doesn't. I think Preacher of the Schism is just a better 3-drop than this. God, I wish that Hall Creeper could still go unblocked. Can you imagine the curve of Silent Hall Creeper into Slasher, copy the Slasher later on in the game and still go unblocked? Oh my God. Oh my goodness. You can't quite do it, but it still would be cool to copy Slasher late in the game. With this, because then you have 2 slashers. If one gets through, that's half their life total rounded up. How many bites does this actually take to kill them by itself? So they start at 20, they take 2 and go to 18, and then they go to 9. And then the next turn this attacks, they go to 7, they lose 4 and go to 3, and then they die the next turn because half their life total rounded up, if they have 1 life left, is 1. Because you're rounding up. Does it work that way? Yes, it does. So this should kill in 3 bites by itself, making it like a 6.7, 6.7. Is it actually kind of a 6.66? Like power-wise. Does its power, because it kills in 3 shots, that means its power is not quite 7. Does that mean its power sort of converts to 6.66? Because that would be adorable. If we figured out that math just now. What a Easter egg that is. But still, Mockingbird. Whoo! Mockingbird is a great call from Kringle Bob in chat. I want to give them the credit for that because if you Mockingbird this, obviously the bird has flying. The clone version of it has flying and Death Touch, meaning it's going to get through like much, much easier. That is sexy. That's pretty good, dude. Whew, I like that. But obviously, too, if you're looking for a 4th turn play, because Mockingbird would be a turn 4 play in that case. If you're looking for the turn 4 play, it's Bloodletter of Aclazotz, right? Like, this is yet another thing that just kills them if you have a Bloodletter of Aclazotz out. Because they lose half their life total, and then they lose twice the amount of life they've lost that turn, so they die. It's just like another redundant effect. We just saw one the other day. What is it? Grievous Wound is also redundant with that combo and kills them immediately if you have a Bloodletter. So, like, this is a great set for Bloodletter of Aclazotz, which is appropriate, I guess. Just a sick little card in terms of the flavor here. If it dies, doesn't get exiled, whatever, then it's going to keep coming back. And if they do try to, like, jump in front of it for combat, then it's going to kill whatever blocks it because it has Death Touch. Problem is, comes back. It just keeps coming, man. Takes like a fair amount of turns to get back attacking again. So there is that. But I don't know, dude. Could be pretty good. But again, I think Preacher of the Schism is probably the better black 3-drop. Gix is the better black 3-drop. Liliana of the Veil is the better black 3-drop. And look at that. We got no more room for black 3-drops in our deck. Phyrexian Arena is a better black 3-drop. Braids, Karavek. I don't know if these are better, but you know, they're good cards. But Slasher is a massive flavor win, and you might play it. You might play it, dude. It's still got the same death touch that Preacher has. It's just got a point of toughness less than the Preacher, but I think that sucks. This is a 3-drop that dies to cut down. Preacher doesn't die to cut down, right? This is a 3-drop that dies to Lightning Strike. This doesn't die to Lightning Strike, or Preacher doesn't die to Lightning Strike. And those things matter, like, greatly, dude. That extra point of toughness, you will feel it when it's gone. So, but that said, if they burn a cut down on this, it's coming back. Please use your Go for the Throat on this guy. I like that. Think about that. Like, Preacher of the Schism and Deep Cavern Bat. Two of their functions, their hidden functions in a black mid-range deck in Standard right now, are to eat removal. You know, they eat a Go for the Throat on turn 2 or 3 so that you can cleanly play the Sheldred or the Aclazotz. And even if the Sheldred eats a Go for the Throat, you can now play the Aclazotz, and it's probably not going to eat a removal spell. But now, between Aclazotz and this guy, you have two dudes that if they eat removal spells, they literally eat them for lunch and just come right back for more later. That's pretty good to have like two playable creatures in your black deck that both just like come back with no effort. You don't have to do anything to trigger them coming back. They just come back. Like it's actually pretty good, but we are in a Sunfall Standard, and Sunfall is being more and more justified like every single day when you do see cards like this. So, but it's hard to judge if this is actually playable. You know what I mean? I'm not too sure. Oh, and by the way, a lot of people, you know, really validated me on Reddit today because I was reading some people's reactions to this card. And one person had the same reaction I did. Only one person where there's like, is that Soren's head? It looked like Soren to me when I first saw the card. But multiple, like dozens of people at this point have said like, did anybody read this as just like a pogo stick saw blade with a head on it when they first saw it? Yes, I did. I thought the guy did not have a body or legs, and it was just like a buzzsaw like rolling around, which is like kind of comical. But no, he's got like a big Freddy Krueger, Edward Scissorhand, and he does have legs. Right. There is alternate art for this card that looks pretty cool too. But altogether, dude, the flavor is out of control. This is one of the better pieces of mechanical flavor in this set. And this set has really, really good mechanical flavor so far. Like really, really, really. But as far as actual playability goes, crapshoot. I'm just not sure. I don't think it's better than some of the things we have access to. But then again, you might try a one of, right? You might just slide a one of in this, you know? How would you evaluate the amount of exile removal in Standard right now? Well, white is a pretty popular color to play in Standard between, you know, the Boros sort of mid-range Urbrass pile decks and the Caretaker's Talent decks of all stripes, whether they're mono white or black white or red white or whatever. There's a lot of those decks. And those decks play both Sunfall and Lay Down Arms. Aside from Sunfall and Lay Down Arms, though, there just aren't that many exile effects. Like, it's not like when you had to worry about the Wandering Emperor or March of Wretched Sorrow was the black one. The White March. This is how quickly I forget Standard cards. But yeah, the White March also exiled stuff, and those were really heavily played cards that don't exist anymore. Sunfall you do have to worry about, and I hate it. But not every deck plays Sunfall anymore, man. So, and even some of the like Caretaker's Talent decks, because they play so many creatures, are now down to like 3 main deck Sunfall, even in best of 1. So, you know, the ramp decks play 4 Sunfall still, but you just don't see them as often as you used to. So I just feel like the format is a little bit more open to these cards after rotation that have like death triggers and stuff, but still pretty hostile, again, when you consider that even if they do cut it down, like it comes back, but you have to wait multiple turns. So that it was still kind of worth them to cut down this card and get some tempo on you and just like go about playing their Sheldreds and their Aclazotzes and trying to just like tempo you out of the game. So there is that to consider too. But as far as actual exile removal, this dying to a lay down arms is probably going to feel bad. But again, that's a lay down arms they don't have for Uncle Aclazotz later, or Sheldred, or Glissa, or like whatever you're doing, right? So that's another one. If you're playing black-green, you already play both Preacher and Glissa. And some of those decks play Sentinel. And are you going to find room for this? Probably not. Probably not. But again, I could see a one of. I could see a one of Unstoppable Slasher just to kind of strike fear into your opponent's heart. And like, if you are in like a Golgari or like a mono black, mirror match of some kind, then there's really no removal that your opponent has that's going to keep this down forever. And the game's going to go longish, in like a mid-range mirror. So he could be the difference. He really could be the difference. And if you are Golgari, my God, you've got like Mosswood Dread Knights that keep coming back, Slashers that keep coming back, Aclazotz keeps coming back. Like that deck is hard to put down for the count right now in terms of its creatures. This is going to help add to that. So I like it, man. I like it, but where are we going to find the slot for it? I'm not too sure, but you know what we have to do? We got to check Mythic Spoiler. I think Philly still has a card to put out today, if I'm not mistaken, but maybe we've already seen Philly's card and I just don't know. Yeah, she hasn't put it out yet. At least, again, unless I missed it. Magic.Wizards, MTG TikTok, TCG Player, Billy, Geek Culture, The Sun, Shopee, MTG Arena, and Ruby Plays all today. So yeah, I think Philly still has a card to put out. So we'll see if she's streaming, and then we'll raid her kind of on our way out. Because then maybe you guys will get to see her card. Maybe she just hasn't revealed it yet. But anyway, good day of previews today, man. Like a fair amount of not amazing commons and uncommons, and not like a huge glut of new cards in general, but some of the stuff we got to see today really exciting. People love this card. I love it. Silent Hall Creeper actually looks like kind of the sleeper of the day. This card looks fantastic. Layline of Mutation is much, much better than anyone gives it credit for. Final Vengeance was an excellent common that's going to see some play. Worry Watchdog, really decent in terms of just like what you're actually getting for the mana cost. Its ability to trade is there too. Popular Egotist, very exciting card for the Aristocrats decks that are coming together right now. And Irreverent Gremlin. This might actually have something to do, even though it only triggers once per turn. I could see there being a deck with this card in it just because effects like it are already playable. And unlike cards like Takasi's Welcoming Vampire, Caretaker's Talent, this allows you, I'll use that word, this allows you to put a card in your yard, which you might actually really want to do. So again, I think some pretty decent stuff today. And the amount of cards that I've seen in Duskmourn so far that look like they'll have some standard relevance is pretty high. So like the power level, and I really like what they're doing with the flavor as well. But if you're watching on YouTube, that's just about the end of it. Let me know how you felt about all of these cards down there in the comments section. And especially if you caught anything I didn't catch, an interaction, or if I'm just wrong about something. But I noticed that the chat did not scream at me about anything I may have gotten wrong. So, if I did, then let me know down there in the comments. But apart from that, check out the Patreon, check out the Twitch for that matter. I'll leave a link in the description. Maybe you can be live here on Twitch with us as we look at new Magic cards. Next week, Thursday of next week, is the official final day of spoiler season. You know what that means? That means that next Thursday on the twitch.tv, we're going to be reviewing every single card in the set. We're going to speed run that as we always do. I'm going to put myself through it for you. So if you're not followed on Twitch for what we're doing right now, make sure you follow on Twitch for that business. But it's pretty much all I got. Just check out all the rest of spoiler season we've done so far. There's been 4 other videos and all of the cards in the set are ridiculous. Very wild set here. So do your stuff. Get down there in the comments section. Subscribe to the sandwich. Like the video, all that, YouTube folk. But if you're on Twitch watching, hang out for a second. But as far as my YouTube people go, I love you too. I'm Dev from the Place. Thanks for watching, Wizards. Spread love and be kind.